Speaking of representatives, we are going to this next story about Joe Rogan. So Joe Rogan has been a pretty interesting character politically. I remember when Joe Rogan backed Bernie Sanders. I remember there was a lot of backlash towards the Sanders campaign because he was endorsed by Joe Rogan. And I was just like, really? Are you kidding me? One of the biggest shows out there. Like, it's great to get that endorsement for Bernie Sanders' campaign. Joe Rogan's politics today are a little different. Some people say that ever since he moved to Texas, he has changed a little bit politically. I don't know him personally. I'm sure you don't either. But I have noticed some differences here and there. Recently, Joe Rogan made a statement about Donald Trump, and I think you guys may find this interesting, and about who he would support. But let's go back. Let's go through this journey with Joe. Let's go back to when Joe endorsed Bernie Sanders. You guys remember this? Here's a flashback for you.
Who are you going to vote for in the primary?
I think I'll probably vote for Bernie. Him as a human being, when I was hanging out with him, and yeah. I believe in him. I like him a lot. What Bernie stands for is a guy who, well, look, you could dig up dirt on every single human being that's ever existed if you catch them in their worst moment and you magnify those moments and you cut out everything else and you only display those worst moments. That said, you can't find very many with Bernie. He's been insanely consistent his entire life. He's basically been saying the same thing, been for the same thing his whole life. And that in and of itself is a very powerful structure to operate from.
So that was back when Joe Rogan did endorse Bernie Sanders. He actually had like an ad that he created in reference to that as well. So that was an interesting moment. Then fast forward to last year, before Donald Trump announced that he was running in 2024, Joe Rogan sort of hinted towards supporting Ron DeSantis of all people. And that also stirred up. So that stirred up a buzz among a lot of people. So I want to take you back to when Joe Rogan said that he was considering supporting Ron DeSantis. Again, this is before Donald Trump announced he was running in 2024. Listen to this.
It's not just abortion rights, but now they're going homosexual, and it's for them. It's important. They want it. They want to affirm their love and their relationship, and the fact that they're going after that now almost makes me feel like they want us to fight. They want to divide us in the best way they can, and that this is the best way for them to keep pulling off all the bullshit they're doing behind the scenes, is to get us to fight over things like gay marriage, or get us to fight over things like abortion. Or it's just like, yes. Why yes. are you removing freedoms?
Yes.
And and then this new thing where they're gun rights, like trying to go after the Second Amendment. Did you see that story that recently happened where there's a shooter in a mall?
Can we say something about the gay marriage real quick?
Yeah, please.
If you're going to say that marriage is an important cultural institution to the fabric of America,
right,
you can't remove it from Americans.
Right.
You can't go and say, this is important, this is what we do, we create a family and we love one another and this is how we express our love, and then say, these Americans can't do that shit.
It's so homophobic, because you're saying there's something wrong with being homosexual. By saying that you are opposed to gay marriage, you're saying you're opposed to gay people.
Yeah.
Because if gay people are in love with each other and they want to have a celebration, and they want to be legally bonded and connected, and there's all sorts of benefits to that in terms of
financial benefits.
You build it into the.
I don't know why the words are off with the video, but sorry. Yeah, we'll just go to the next one. Sorry, guys. But anyway, last year, Joe Rogan said that he would support Ron DeSantis before Donald Trump announced that he was running. And people caught wind of that, and it was not received well, right? And so, of course, one of the people that did not receive it well was Kyle Kalinske, because he is friends with Joe Rogan. And he made a video saying, I hope Joe realizes what this guy has done and who he really is, and why this is not a good option for him. He also went on to the Joe Rogan show to talk about that, to talk about his support of Ron DeSantis. So let's go ahead and get into that piece right here.
People are going to go.
DeSantis. So, because I know you were also a fan of Bernie.
Yes.
And they're like polar opposites in terms of the rest of their policies.
I'm a fan of him for different reasons.
Right, yeah.
You know?
But I know you said that you thought he would make a good president. And there's a bunch of things about him that I think would probably change your opinion on it. Like, for example, he thinks weed should stay illegal because it smells bad.
Is that really his opinion, that it smells bad?
See, this is another example where, so this is Kyle trying to convince Joe Rogan that Ron DeSantis would not be a good choice to support for president, right? It's funny, he starts with the weed thing first because he knows that Joe likes to smoke. But what's interesting, though, is that, like, obviously you could tell that Joe Rogan didn't know that.
He said it
Does
smells,
he not know about edibles?
Quote, putrid, and he wants it to stay banned because of that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Is that really his rationalization?
Jamie, if you want, you could pull that up.
Yeah, that's what it says here. But it's legal in Florida, or medically.
It says marijuana should remain criminalized because of its putrid odor. Polling compiled by the University of North Florida showed that most Floridians want the adult use of marijuana to be legal in the Sunshine State. That's certainly not the case. In fact, under state law, the possession of up to 20 grams of cannabis is punished by a $1,000 fine and up to a year in prison. Possession of greater amounts is a felony. So what has he said? What I don't like about it is if you go to some of these places that have done it, the stench when you're out there, I mean, it smells so putrid. I want people to be able to breathe freely. Well, that's silly.
Yeah.
But that's also like I want to know the context. I mean, that's a quote. The smell of marijuana. DeSantis demurs on marijuana legalization, but can't stand the dank stank. Well, okay, you don't have to like the smell. You know, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that's why he wants it illegal. He just doesn't like the smell. A lot of people don't like the smell.
But it's not legal there recreationally, right?
No, not yet.
No?
No.
It's
not legal here either.
Would he sign the bill is the question, you know? And it seems to me like he would, because he's a social conservative by and large, you know? Like, that's his perspective. Another one is they had a vote in Florida, a direct vote on raising the minimum wage during the 2020 election. And so Trump won the state, but 60% of Florida voters voted for a minimum wage increase. They wanted to make it 15. And leading into that, DeSantis said, don't do that. I'm against doing that.
Did he have a rationalization?
For the record, Florida did pass the $15 minimum wage. So that is still in place in Florida. Again, these are incremental steps. It doesn't happen automatically at once. Same thing with Massachusetts. When we passed $15 minimum wage, it didn't happen all at once. It was over a course of a couple of years. So just FYI. But what I thought was interesting is that he brought up the weed point, and Joe's just kind of like, interesting. Because even if Ron DeSantis became president and he did, refuse to legalize marijuana, how does that really affect Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan's rich, like he lives in Texas, it's not legal in Texas, and he still obviously smokes. So someone like him would not be affected. So that's the other thing. That's why Joe's just kind of like,
I mean, I didn't see if he did, but just the fact he's against it was a strike against him in my mind. But it did. The voters voted for it, and that is the law. So because they had the direct vote, and I don't know if he has any legal recourse, so it's becoming law. But he told them don't vote for it. So that was a big issue. Because I know you're a fan of legal weed, you're a fan of raising the minimum wage.
Yeah.
He's also a big Wall Street guy. I mean, a lot of these Republicans, you don't have to look too far under the surface to find out they're all playing the same game. He took $20 million from Wall Street. He did $5.7 billion in tax cuts and giveaways to corporations. Apparently, 99% of companies in Florida pay no corporate income tax. So it's one of the states that corporations go to sort of, it's a field day over there.
Again, notice Joe Rogan does not sound like he is affected. Like, this doesn't affect him on a personal level. He's just kind of like, he's not like, oh man, that sucks or anything like that.
And remember, he was feuding with Disney. Remember when he was feuding with Disney? And he was like, you guys are fucking woke and this has got to stop. But he let them keep a $578 million tax break at the same time. And at that same time, he also did a $1 billion tax hike on regular Floridians with a new sales tax.
Well, the amount of business that Disney must be bringing into Florida is insane.
Right.
I mean, they own Orlando.
Which is all the reason they don't need more of a subsidy, right? Like, let them fuck it. They'll be able to swim. They're not going to sink. Like, let them be.
What do you think that is? Do you think there's just...
What's interesting is the corporate part that he brought up about Ron DeSantis. Like, he's a big corporate guy. So was Joe Biden, but you support him. So I don't even, again, like, does that even matter to what's left of progressives now if people are telling you to vote for Joe Biden?
Some financial chicanery, some behind the scenes.
I think if you're the governor of Florida and you know how big Disney is, you might talk a game every now and then of like, yeah, we don't like these guys or whatever. They're too woke. But when push comes to shove,
I don't remember what that was
check.
in regard to, the woke thing. I don't recall. It was a very specific instance.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't remember it either. But he had a big fight with them, but ultimately he gave them their tax break. And then the other thing is, so there's a big sugarcane industry in Florida, and they lead to a lot of pollution because they do these things called burn fields. It's part of like the process involved with the sugarcane. And he came in and shielded them from any legal accountability. So people can't sue them over that. Yeah, so, and the Florida Republican Party took a $350,000 contribution from the sugarcane industry, and then in turn he protected them from legal liability.
And when you're saying pollution, there's particulates in the atmosphere because of the burning?
Yeah, they...
So as you notice, like, Joe Rogan's just kind of like, so what do you mean by the pollution thing and stuff like that? Again, these are things that don't affect Joe Rogan directly, right? So he's kind of like, meh. Like, I still think DeSantis obviously is a horrible choice. I don't know why Ron DeSantis is running. He's not charismatic. His policies suck. He's just not a good choice. So I was surprised when Joe Rogan said that he would support DeSantis based on some of the things that he did in Florida that Rogan did approve of in reference to like the pandemic, etc. He also had said at one point in time that Ron DeSantis was against censorship, but that's actually not true. He's against certain types of censorship, and in some ways he's in favor of censorship. So it was really weird. It seemed like Joe was kind of not just either not aware or not paying attention to those things.
Say that because of those sugarcane burn fields, there's increased risk of cancer and red tide. Have you ever heard of red tide in Florida?
That's the ocean red tide?
Yeah, there's some weird ocean red tide thing. Apparently the burning of the sugarcane helps lead to that as well, along with, like you said, the particulate matter, which could lead to cancer.
The burning of it, that's like a common agricultural approach, right? Where they do that to sort of revigorize that's not a word, but reinvigorate the soil, right? The topsoil. Is that what they're doing?
I mean, there's some industrial reason why they do it, but I think there was conversation around, hey, we got to regulate this. We have to make it, we got to lower the cancer rate. We got to lower the red tide. We got to figure this out.
And there's a direct correlation between those burns and cancer instances?
Yeah, there's a lot of health problems around those things, yeah. Yeah,
So notice how Joe's just like, like, I don't think he was looking at single issue. Some people are single issue voters. So in reference to Ron DeSantis, we're not going to play this whole thing, but in reference to Ron DeSantis, in reference to like single issue, when it came to the pandemic, that was one of the things that Rogan did appreciate about DeSantis leadership in reference to Florida. So he supported Bernie. Then he was willing to support Ron DeSantis last year. And now I want you to hear what Joe Rogan is saying about Donald Trump. Listen to this.
No one is going to run against Trump in the Republican side and win, because you're not going to get the Trump supporters. They are all in on Trump, unless he has a stroke, unless something happens that's horrible. They're all in on Trump. If you run against Trump, you're now the enemy of Trump. If I was friends with DeSantis, I'd be like, don't do it. You can't beat that guy. You just can't. When that guy gets out there and he's waving to people and they're going crazy, you're not beating that.
So see, now he's saying Ron DeSantis should not do it. But again, that was before Trump announced.
And the fact that he was the president for 4 years and the country was in a great economic situation. Yeah. And it looked like his policies were actually effective, and that it looked like the unemployment was down, all business was building, regulations were being relaxed, more things were getting done. you know, when you look at it from a policy perspective, if you just look at it on paper, what he did was effective. A lot of people think it was effective. You don't like him as a personality, so you ignore that. Don't do that. Look at it in terms of a policy perspective. People liked the ideas that he was putting forward. And now you're saying like, oh, the wall is raised. No, the fucking, everybody thinks there needs to be a wall. Even the
Let's pause here before we get into immigration. The policies that Donald Trump was putting forward, what I thought was interesting about this conversation, it seems like he didn't want to focus on the policies that Trump did that were not well received by a lot of people. Like, for example, the tax breaks for the corporations, for Amazon, for Netflix, like these corporations that weren't paying any taxes under Trump's presidency. You know, looking out for his billionaire friends, looking out for the wealthy people. Like, he's talking about the economy, but he leaves that part out. And I thought that was interesting that he didn't mention that part in reference to Donald Trump. And I know he's aware of that because, you know, again, he endorsed Bernie Sanders for 2020. And that was one of the things that Bernie Sanders was calling out numerous times on the campaign trail. So it was just weird to me that he didn't mention that part when he was talking about the economy. He was talking about money under President Trump.
Mayor of New York City is now calling to stop immigration into his city. And this was the guy that called it for it to be a sanctuary state. When the reality of what your policies, what kind of actions you put forth, what the results of that are, and those results are highly negative, you're forced to sort of recollect your thoughts and come up with a new perspective. And that's what the mayor of New York City is doing right now. When you just look at what Trump's policies were, and then obviously COVID hits, there's a lot to that, the lockdowns, the economic collapse, all the shit that came with that. None of that is good. And then Trump holds up this like hope to bring us back to where we were when he was in office. You're not going to beat that. I don't think they're going to beat that. I don't think, when you look at the Russia collusion, when you look at the Steele dossier, when you look at all the bullshit they tried to throw at him that we now know is bullshit, not just bullshit, but coordinated bullshit. When you look at the fact that they suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story and that 51 intelligence agency representatives signed off on that to say that this was Russian disinformation, which they know is not true. That's scary. Because now you have the intelligence agencies colluding to keep a guy from being president that was president during a time where the country was thriving economically. You're not going to beat that guy.
Would he get your vote?
Before we get to that answer there, and this is the gentleman that hosts that PDD. You guys ever seen that PBD podcast? He hosts that podcast. One of the things that was interesting that I will say in reference to the pandemic, a lot of times people like Rogan actually brag about what Joe Biden did for the American people under his presidency. When he talks about pandemic relief, if you go back and crunch the numbers, we actually got more pandemic relief, or at least in reference to those stimulus checks. Well, actually, no, if you include so the student debt pause, the student loan payment pause, that actually happened under Donald Trump's administration. The stimulus checks, we actually received more money from Donald Trump than we did Joe Biden. So when you look at that pandemic relief, that's something people are pointing to, like, wait a minute, the student loan debt moratorium started under Donald Trump. He was the one that said freeze the payments, but now the repayment is happening under Joe Biden. So that's just something to think about.
That guy.
Would he get your vote?
He'd get my vote before, excuse me, he'd get my vote before Biden. I said that before.
That part right there. So that statement from Joe Rogan has people in a tizzy. Some people are just like, I can't believe Joe Rogan is actually considering voting for Donald Trump. So apparently what Joe was saying is that if it's between Trump and Biden, he said Trump would get his vote. And this is something I want to say to the rest of you as well, something that I have been noticing. There are other Bernie supporters that I have spoken to privately and someone calling that have also said the same thing. that if it's between Trump and Biden, they said they'll support Donald Trump. Kim Iverson, who was also a Bernie supporter, you know, she was a part of that wave of podcasters that started during the Bernie's campaigns. Kim Iverson, last time she was on my show, said the exact same thing. Why do you believe that is? Why are people more willing to do that? I'm talking about the people particularly coming from the Bernie movement. Why are they more willing to go that way? And I know there's the issues with the economy. So a lot of people, we're talking about the inflation. The economy's a mess. It's a hot, hot mess. But we're not talking about people that voted for Biden that are willing to, in turn, this time vote for Donald Trump because they're mad about the economy. I'm talking about the people that were Bernie supporters. And Bernie is further to the left than Joe Biden. So why are those people the ones who wanted Medicare for all, the ones who wanted, you know, canceling student loan debt, like who wanted the free universities? Why are those people willing to now turn and vote for Donald Trump, who doesn't want any of those things? I think this is a discussion that we need to have. Maybe I should have a panel on this show of people asking them why, you know, because these are different policies. So what is it?
I don't think that I never thought that Biden was going to make it. I never thought that he was going to be functional. You know, like regardless of what kind of power the president actually has. And it appears under Trump, the president has a lot more power than we think they do. But under Biden, it's like he's handled. Like he's just out there talking and saying, the real problem is Donald Trump. Donald Trump, what he's done is terrible. What he did in the office. It's all nonsense. It's like everyone's treating him with kid gloves because they don't want to prop up Trump. They don't want to go after him because it'll weaken the Democratic Party.
So this is something that I think, I really do think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to try and do that panel at some point to see why are people feeling that way? You know, I would argue, why not support independent or third party candidates? Because, you know, if you get Biden and Trump again, it's like, why not just go an opposite direction instead of supporting this two-party system altogether? And that brings up another thing, because going into it right now, if we're looking at the poll, this most recent one, right? 2024 vote preference among all adults, 51% say Donald Trump, 42% say Joe Biden. So Trump almost has a double-digit lead ahead of Joe Biden now. It was not this close a couple of days ago. Or this, excuse me, not this close. It was not this far apart a couple of days ago. It was definitely closer. So something's happening. African American support has increased under Donald Trump. And then there's a whole, you know, just batch of people that have no political home. And they're just like, I don't want either one of these people. I'm just going to choose third party or independent. And hopefully more people will go that way this time. But something here has to change. But I thought it was interesting for you to see that evolution of Joe Rogan, the Bernie supporter, then Ron DeSantis. And now he said if it's Biden and Trump, he's going to vote for Donald Trump. I think what it goes to show is that maybe some people are not necessarily just attached to a political ideology or attached to a person, a certain candidate. Maybe for some people, they just can move and bend and just kind of feel things out. And maybe they just may change their mind. And maybe Joe Rogan's one of those people where maybe we shouldn't put him in a camp. Right? Something to think about. It'll be interesting, too, going into this next story about Ralph Nader. Because I guess I should have seen this one coming. Thank you so much, Marvin. Remember, Build Back Better, I think that's Build Back Better, came to U.S. Congress, got Bibi came to Congress, got standing ovation. Crimes against Palestinians, hypocrisy of West. Thank you, Beeman. They're little more than neo-Nays and your friend. Thank you, P. Smith. Poland wants Hunka extradited. Thank you, Roger. Sab, come on. Joe Rogan acting like that because he's high. Thank you, Freddie. Power always corrupts. Thanks, Sabby, for exposing it. And thank you, Joe Paradise. If West wasn't running, Trump would have my vote too. Interesting. See, this goes to show you we can't just put everybody into a box, right? Even when it comes to politics. And Lana says, but Bernie turned out to be a sham. There's that too.